to all the participants, the stakeholders of this meeting, is to focus on important take-homes and provide 1, 2, 3, 4 actionable points that the governance systems should follow. How do we arrive at these 1, 2, 3, 4 actionable points when the system is very complex? This is the scholarly activity that all of you are capable of doing. So therefore, while presenting papers, please keep in mind that eventually we need to distill an extract of actionable points. And we have to move on using this kind of policy, this kind of concept note that we pass on to the governance, so that all the tribal culture, their livelihood, their lifestyle, their economic well-being, their culture, and all important aspects of their social life, etc., are preserved when the globalization is sweeping the country and the world. So distinct identities have to be maintained, and the identities can be maintained even when the globalization sets in. And for this to happen, there has to be a productive engagement between us, the stakeholders, and them, the governance systems. This is a one-point agenda, essentially to communicate properly what is to be done and what is not to be done in order to preserve the welfare and the socio-ethnic cultural traits of the tribal systems in India. I will not belabor this point too much. Please keep in mind that we maintain this dialogue, this engagement, and come up with important take-homes from this meeting. I have gone through some of the abstracts of this meeting. They are exciting area that all the presentations are going to cover in the coming 2 days. There are multiple sessions, large number of presentations, and therefore it is going to be a feast of activity in covering all the aspects of tribal activities in multiple dimensions. I wish all the success for this meeting, and I wish a very bright future for such activities. And we must continue this journey by keeping the governance systems in engagement with us, and all the scholars should essentially point out the right direction for this organization to move forward in that direction. Finally, I thank the 3 main organizers of this meeting, that is Ministry of Tribal Affairs, MOTA, Government of India, Tribal Welfare Department, Government of AP, and the TCM, TCR and TM, which is a very important acronym where important flavors are included, such as Tribal Cultural Research and Training Mission. So you can see that very important stakeholders are together in this meeting, and important collection of scholars are deliberating, and therefore this is likely to be a very important discussion forum for the coming 2 days, and I hope significant conclusions are put forward, and we take these conclusions to the governance system and make sure that they follow these. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. All the best.
Thank you very much, sir, Professor B.J. Rao, sir, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, for setting the agenda for the 2 days our national seminar. So thank you very much, sir. We will these 2 days agenda, the best research papers contributed by the eminent scholars will be presented, and they will be useful to us. Once again, I am thankful to the Professor Vice Chancellor for giving valuable message and setting the agenda for us. Now, I request our chief guest and president of the today's seminar, our Secretary Kantilal sir, to inaugurate the best 4 volumes of the books ever produced by the government of Andhra Pradesh. Not only Andhra Pradesh, even in the other states also, this type of valuable books never came out. So now I request G.D. Lakshmi Madam to. So this is the first book, the TCRTM that you have produced. This book is on tribal livelihood and governance, regional reflections, edited by yourself, V. Srinivasarao garu. So another book that TCRTM has that is produced is Disadvantaged Tribes of India, Regional Reflections and Regional Concerns, edited by Professor V. Srinivasarao. So I request our secretary sir to release the book. So third book that is produced by the TCRTM, Tribal Welfare Department, Government of Andhra Pradesh is Challenges of Tribal Development, Contemporary Social Concerns. Now I request the Secretary Tribal Welfare, Kantidal Reddy sir, to go to that. The fourth book that is published by the Tribal Culture Research and Training Mission, Tribal Welfare Department, Government of Andhra Pradesh is Tribal Integration in India, Northeast and beyond. Now I request the Secretary sir to launch the book. The best knowledge repository on the tribal issues has come in the shape of 4 volumes of the books published by Government of Andhra Pradesh Tribal Welfare Department. So I am thankful to the Center for Regional Studies, University of Hyderabad, for bringing out a valuable books for the department. So these books will be useful to all the stakeholders of who are in the government, in the academic side, the NGOs and others studying in the colleges also. So thank you very much. Now I request Srinivasarao garu to briefly highlight about the books.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Just now, I would like to share one file which gives the details of the contributions made by the different authors to bring out this particular volumes as a contribution of the TCRTM, Andhra Pradesh. Sir, briefly, I would like to draw the attention of the dignitaries and also the rest of the participants and others across India, particularly the tribal research institutes from different states, and especially the Joint Secretary, Tribal Welfare Department, Ministry of Tribal Welfare, Government of India. Because this has happened, it's only because the encouragement and funding given by the MOTA, Ministry of Tribal Welfare, Government of India, through TCRTM, Government of Andhra Pradesh. These titles of these books, as already released by TCRTM in the seminar, we received nearly 300 papers across different authors who have established on their research field from different research organizations and universities across India, including the TRIs. The idea I have already explained, and that now I would like to give brief background of the chapters that has come from different states, highlighting the issues of particular states. The first table that I would like to share with you shows that the states and region-wise chapters and issues that have come up to these 4 volumes. Out of 67 chapters written by 86 authors, from Northeast we received 18 chapters, sir, and the final book that released in the seminar, that is Tribal Integration in India, Northeast and Beyond, that explains about various issues that has actually been under the debate for a long time. That this shows that the scholars would like to highlight the issues of their governance, maybe their culture, their identity, their ethnicity, etc., etc. And currently, we have also been witnessing various conflicts in Northeast, and how to address these issues. I would like to thank all these 18 others who contributed these chapters highlighting these issues from that particular region of Northeast. And leaving this, the rest of the Northeast, there are the papers from highlighting the issues at national level. There are 14 papers compiled across these 4 volumes. And the next, state of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha, the others contributed 8 papers each from these 2 states, highlighting, of course, globalization with reference to their education, health, culture, issues in land, livelihood, etc. And Chhattisgarh we received 5, Kerala, West Bengal, Telangana, Gujarat, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, and Rajasthan. With this, I would like to inform that most of the papers that we received across these states, highlighting the common issues in some of the papers, and there are diverse issues. And when we analyze the papers and the outcome of this research, we would like to know that even though the issues are same, but there are diversity to address them. The next table actually explains the contributors' background, and these papers contributed by the authors' background. I mean, there are senior scholars who retired from their, from their profession as a professors, and associate professor, assistant professors put together. There are nearly, 45 around scholars, those who have been, expertise their research in the different fields of the tribal studies. Next, of course, we also encourage the PhD scholars from different research organizations and universities across India. There are 10 out of 67 who contributed for these volumes. And some of the NGOs and who have been working rigorously on the tribal issues, there are around 5. And even if we felt that there are good scholars who could contribute on these issues, even we also encouraged MA students. Now currently they are enrolled for the PhD and they are pursuing PhD in different research organizations. And very interestingly, one of the authors from school assistant from Andhra Pradesh, she has written on the importance of English medium education that government recently introduced in Andhra Pradesh. That was a wonderful paper that, from the tribal students' point of view, how this paper is, relevant for the policy analysis to replicate the same idea of government of Andhra Pradesh to introduce English medium in different parts of the country in scheduled areas. And the next one, of course, and these are the 4 volumes compiled with a different number of chapters, put together 67 papers written by 85 authors. All these commonalities and the diverse issues of the issues that we have highlighted in these 4 volumes. 4 volumes definitely to address the gaps from the policy analysis. And we always think that we always have almost a common policy to address the diverse issues of the tribes in this country. But in the reality, even though we have a common policy, but the tribes, they have a different issues. The livelihood issue of Andhra Pradesh is not the same from Chhattisgarh. The Chhattisgarh livelihood issue is not same from Northeast. The culture of Northeast is not same from the rest of the South. In that way, every region has a unique, issues and ideas. Therefore, from that point, from that core issue, how region is very important to understand for the policy contribution is very important aspect that we tried as authors of these core volumes to highlight this particular issue. Therefore, with this brief introduction of the background of the volumes, I also request now this is the time to TCTRM, Government of Andhra Pradesh, and rest of the TRIs, including Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, how they use it for the policy formulation and execution of different tribal programs across India. I thank Dr. Nawaljit Kapoor, who actually inspires the TRIs across different states. I came to understand his contribution when I was interacting with the different TRIs, particularly from TCTRM mission director Sri Ravindra Babu Garu and other colleagues and dignitaries on the dais. I'm really thankful for giving this opportunity to the Center for Regional Studies, and we have a different expertise in the center from the University of Hyderabad, from the Center for Regional Studies, who have been sincerely contributing to bring such kind of wonderful outcomes from this kind of research. And therefore, in the future course of action, I also would like to request the rest of the TRIs across different states and also TCTRM through University of Hyderabad, including the Ministry of Tribal Welfare, Government of India, to have this as a wonderful platform for the next 2 days to discuss and disseminate various best practices to learn from each other for the upliftment to address various issues of tribals in this country. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. So, with the permission of the Secretary, Tribal Affairs, Kantilal sir, as our Joint Secretary, Minister of Tribal Affairs is having urgent work at Parliament. So, with the permission of the Secretary, sir, now I request Dr. Nawaljit Kapoor, Joint and Secretary, Minister of Tribal Affairs, to kindly give valuable message on the national seminar. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Shrimati Pushpa Pamula ji, Secretary Tribal Affairs, Andhra Pradesh, Kantilal Dande ji, dignitaries, Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, Dr. Virginius Khakha ji, Dr. V.S. Rao, Shri Ranjit Basha ji, Director Tribal Welfare, Shri Ravinder Babuji, directors TRIs who have joined from all over the country, esteemed guests, I compliment TRI Andhra Pradesh for a very important topic which is relevant in context of COVID pandemic. Dr. Rao has already given the brief background how complex is globalization issue and it affects livelihood and culture of the tribals. The national seminar will address various questions concerning globalization. It will not only define a region from a public policy standpoint concerning tribals, but how tribal regions are affected by globalization and how public policy formulation should be so that the globalization and the tribal unique identity and culture, they can go together. Our Honorable Prime Minister has given slogan of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Ministry of Tribal Affairs, in cooperation with all the states and TRIs, they are working on this mission that not only the unique identity of the tribals is maintained, but at the same time, tribal also reap the benefits of the development. I will like to say only few of such initiatives. Bandhan Karyakram is one such program where Ministry of Tribal Affairs promotes self-help groups and minor forest produce, which is the main source of livelihood for tribals. The processing of such MFPs, then marketing, branding, so that these items, they can be sold throughout the country. Likewise, minimum support price for minor forest produce is another such intervention which state governments are taking when the price of the minor forest produce go below the minimum support price. Ministry has also given research projects to various TRIs. Andhra Pradesh is also one of them, where we are ensuring that what are the reasons for tribal migration, and if we can map those reasons and we can identify how best livelihood can be given to the tribals in their own environment. I must compliment Andhra Pradesh, who has come forward with it is the first state to bring out a legislation on tribal subplan. As far as tribal subplan is concerned, the funds of Government of India and the state governments, they account for more than 2 lakh crores in a year. And it is very, very important that convergence among different ministries, different departments of Government of India and the state departments, they should work out some strategy so that there is comprehensive development of tribal villages. And all these funds, they are concentrated in villages. For this, ministry has also done gap analysis of 1,17,000 villages. And ministry is also coming up with the integrated development of village programs, in which Andhra Pradesh is also participating, and they have also done a lot of work in this area. I'll also like to mention here that Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, it is coming up with 740 Eklavya schools so that quality education can be provided to tribal students in their own environment. With Virginius Khaka sir being here, Dr. Rao being here, I will request all such dignitaries to guide us, to help us how best Ministry of Tribal Affairs and states, they can work together and policies and programs can be identified for their development. Here also, I like to compliment Andhra Pradesh government in particular for coming out with various programs during COVID for the welfare of the tribals. I'll also like to mention that Tribal Freedom Fighter Museum is coming at Singni, and TRI building is also coming up at Vishakhapatnam. These are some of the few activities which Ministry of Tribal Affairs and state government they are taking together. As far as this seminar is concerned, I am told that more than 200 scholars they participated from all over the country, and 67 research papers from eminent scholars have been selected for the presentations. These papers pertain to livelihood, education, impact of globalization, and threats to the tribals in the context of the globalization. I once again congratulate TRI Andhra Pradesh, Ravinder Babuji and his team for this excellent work. And I wish all the success for this seminar. And I hope that the outcomes of the seminars will be useful for not only for evidence-based planning, but coming out with policies and programs for the welfare of the tribals. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable message and the Ministry of Tribal Affairs support to the government of Andhra Pradesh in respect of sanctioning more number of UMRS schools for imparting quality education to our scheduled tribe students. And secondly, the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is supporting the government of Andhra Pradesh in respect of providing sufficient funds, even more than also in respect of Article 275(1) and SCA to TSP and pre-metric scholarship, post-metric scholarship, MSP support. So, and you have rightly pointed out that, sir, under Prime Minister Adigram Yojana, Government of Andhra Pradesh is also actively participating, and this year, out of 517 villages selected, this year 20% means around 150 model villages we are going to submit the plan, sir. And second thing, under Prime Minister Untitled Yojana, Government of Andhra Pradesh doing excellent VDVK, sir, and accordingly our Government of Andhra Pradesh has secured 5 national awards in case of VDVK's performance, sir. So I'm thankful to the Ministry of Tribal Affairs for giving valuable support in this regard, sir. Again, with your guidance and support, this Government of Andhra Pradesh Tribal Welfare Department, under the leadership of the present government, will take the tribal development to more heights and development, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable sessions. So now I request our Director Tribal Welfare, sir, to give valuable welcome address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Radhababu. On this auspicious day, on the occasion of World Adivasi Day, I extend a warm welcome and greetings to our Chief Guest and Deputy Chief Minister, Mr. Pamela Puspashrivani Garu, then Professor B.J. Rao Garu, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, and our Secretary, Andhra Garu, then Navajit Kapoor, Joint Secretary, Government of India, Professor Virginia Kaka, then all other delegates, colleagues, and research scholars who are participating in this national conference. This national seminar based very generic and broad concerning about the tribal issues, focusing on how the tribal development or tribal rights should be protected in the context of globalization. As expected, we received nearly 200 eminent scholars' research papers, and combining with all these articles and research papers, I congratulate and I grateful to Srinivasarao Garu brought up this. It is very useful to supplement the public policy, more specifically if the tribe or a region specific instead of a uniform policy. As you know, the needs and challenges and also the
There is some audio and video problems, sir. Just I'm calling them. I think there is some technical problem. I think I informed them, they will come back. There is a little connectivity problem from the physical dais from the funding agency. They are just working on it. Maybe a couple of minutes.
So now
I request all the delegates, please stay on. Just they are working. Maybe there may be a couple of. Hello. a small piece of information received from the dais that there is some disconnection from the venue where they are operating from the Fortune Murali Park. They are working on it. I think they will come back within a couple of minutes.
Facilities have been created. So thankful to the ENC Garu for their support in creating valuable infrastructure in the tribal areas. Now I request Dr. Palla Trinadrau Garu, who is an eminent advocate in scheduled tribal laws, especially LTR and PISA, and RFR, who has contributed a lot in implement of the governance in scheduled areas. Now I request Dr. Palla Tirunadra Garu to give his valuable message.
Respected officers in the dais and the delegates and research scholars, academicians on the line, and my friend Kaka is also on the line, within his Kaka. So, first of all, I would like to greet the tribal communities and the friends and the officers who are working for the tribal communities on this occasion, because today is the 27th International Adivasis Day. So, I also congratulate the eminent scholars who have contributed several papers, research papers, on the socio-economic development of the tribal communities with the regional perspective, and also implementation of these several regulations and legislations which are able to protect the interest of the tribal communities and also enhance the livelihoods and opportunities for the tribal communities to improve their livelihoods in the tribal areas. And the TCRTM also has given an opportunity to contribute one research paper in one of the volumes of these four books on the implementation of the Forest Rights Act 2006, the act which is able to correct injustice done to the tribal communities in the country, and to stop the perpetration of the crimes and atrocities against the tribal communities who have been living on the forest and an occupation of the forest landscape in both the scheduled areas and non-scheduled areas. So I have documented the role played by the government of Andhra Pradesh in implementing the Forest Rights Act in Andhra Pradesh, and the role played by the government officials, the Commissioner of Tribal Welfare and Secretary of Tribal Welfare, giving several policy notes, policy circulars for effective implementation of the Act in Andhra Pradesh, and nowhere in the country such notifications, such policies, decisions have been taken, and nowhere in the country such notifications, such policies, decisions have been taken in respect of protecting the tribal community rights for the forest lands. So I thank the TCRTM for giving the opportunity to speak these two words for the benefit of tribal communities I hope that this 2-day seminar will deliver valuable and actionable points to take up by the policymakers and the government official machinery for implementing the policies. I request the Mr. Srinivasa Rao at least to bring out a brief policy brief on each theme. That would be helpful for the policymakers and the government officers to look into the actionable points and to implement the policies. Otherwise, I think that these volumes, I think that education, language, culture, and the rights implementation. That would be easy for the policymakers to just have look at the glance and carry forward for the benefit of the tribunals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, whereas he is giving advices on tribal laws to the tribal welfare department for some reservations in the scheduled areas that we could do better. Now, I request Professor excellent, renowned authority in tribal welfare subject to give his valuable message as a keynote address. Thank you, sir. Over to Professor Vajiris Katagar.
Sir, you're not audible, sir.
Okay.
Please unmute.
Now it's okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Chairperson of this inaugural functions, Sri Ravindra Babu, Mission Director Tribal Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh. Sri Dr. Navjit Kapoor, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Sri Professor G.B. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, and all other dignitaries who are present in the dais, and the fellow participants, faculties, and researchers who are going to participate in this conference. I'm not very sure because I thank Srinivas for this invitation, which of course came in a very short notice, and therefore it has not really been possible to think, and of course more importantly to write, which always takes time. And therefore what I will do is that I'll try to share some of my ideas on the particular theme of the seminar, namely the tribal policies and programs in India, regional reflection in the context of globalization. To begin with, I think it's always important for us as a researcher, whether we are doing with the tribal studies or any other studies, particularly when we talk of the tribal policy, I think it is important for us to think a little more carefully about how do we really reflect on these three terms that we generally use in our engagement with the development, not only in the context of tribes, but development in general, namely the policies, programs, and schemes. I think how are they really related, and how are they really even when you talk about the policies, are there in the context of, let's say, a community like tribes, it is a general policy, and within that general policy, there are policies with respect to different aspects or different dimensions of the tribal society. And then following the policies are the programs, or and how do you work out the schemes. So these are, I think these are terms, these are classifications which we use, and sometimes we never try to understand, we use mechanically. Sometimes it appears to us that even the programs are really programs, is a policy, or it is a part of the policy, or it is really a policy. So there are all these kinds of confusion, and as a researcher, I have always found a little difficult to handle this whole idea of the policies, programs, and schemes in trying to look at, let's say, in a very conceptually clean sheet, conceptually having a conceptual clarity that I have always found a little difficulty, and I know it that we had legal systems, we have law, we have policies. Following policies, maybe we start programs, and maybe within the program there are schemes and all that. But I think this needs to be, to my mind, needs to be really conceptualized a little more coherently and more systematically. Now, coming to the very theme of the tribal policies, are we really talking about the tribal policy? Is there a national tribal policy, or there are really tribal policies which refer to maybe tribal communities as a whole, and the tribal policy with respect to, let's say, maybe aspects of education, maybe aspects of livelihood, or aspects of health? Now, how do we really look at that? Is there a tribal policy? And the concern for a policy for the tribals has been historically rooted. And we all know then at the 1940s, early 1940s, the debate between Elvin and G.S. Gurye on what should be the perspective, what should be the policy that we need to adopt to understand or to address the problems of the development of the tribals. So that has been there, and there has been a lengthy debate. Eventually, you find that Elvin, in a way, thought that he had gone too far in terms of his whole idea of what he thought ought to be. And it is said that even Gurye changed his positions, and both, rather than talking of isolation or assimilation, both really went in favor of what is known as the integration. But what does integration really mean? Now, has there been an idea which has been clearly explicated as to the fact that the policy, what does integration means in the context of a community like tribes? We are using this term integration, but what does it really mean? And are the policies which have been adopted actually, is it moving in the directions of integrations, or is it really moving in the directions of assimilations? And if you find that a certain context is moving in the direction of integrations, or in certain directions moving in the directions of assimilation, then you find that these are not the same policies. These are not the same national policy. That means even the national policy is very, very different, keeping on mind the regional context which you are really referring to. So I think there is this idea of the tribal policy that we are talking. So what is really tribal policy? Where do we really look at? I remember that I think in somewhere else between 91 and 2020, 2000s, I think there was an attempt to formulate a national policy for tribals, and it didn't go far. And then again, I think in 2006, again you find that there was an attempt, and if you really go to the website of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, you find this draft. But then till today, we have not been able to work out the national tribal policy, and yet we really talk the national tribal policy of India is integration. So there is no formulation, there is no explicit formulations of the national tribal policy till today. Even the draft could not really be taken forward, and it is just remains a draft. So there is, in a sense, a serious problems in terms of talking about the national tribal policy, the tribal policy. So is there a tribal policy? Now, if we really talking of tribal policy, then it means what we mean by policy. There is no clear formulations. Generally, people say that what Jawaharlal Nehru wrote in a preface to the book of Berid Elwin, the title Philosophy for NEFA, that they really take it as a tribal policy. And if I'm not mistaken, that tribal policy, in fact, he mentions that, just 1 minute. Basically it says that tribal right in land and forest must be respected. That social and cultural institutions should be the basis on which the tribal development should really be addressed or promoted. That it is the people who should be part of the administrations and the development rather than being the outsiders. And that they should develop according to their own genius. Now, these are some of the elements which he and what is called Panchsheel or 5 principles that talk about it. But Jawaharlal Nehru postulated this, some people say in 1952, but more specifically it is there in the preface to the book of Philosophy for NEFA, which I think came in the 1950s, or I don't exactly, 1950s or 1960s. Web second edition might have come in the 1960s. You can check about it. So that is what they talk about. So should we really take principles which was put forward in the preface to the book as a national policy? And people generally talk about it, but that national policy has never been translated. So if you really look at that as a national policy of India, then how far that has been really implemented in the regional context, that really needs to be probed, that really needs to be examined. And if you really look at even the national policy which Jawaharlal Nehru might have enunciated, you find that it is more of an explications of the provisions that we have in the Indian Constitution. So if you look at the Indian constitutions, we have provisions which primarily oriented towards protecting the tribals, no matter which regions, which parts of India they are. And there is a provision as to how they are to be drawn into the larger Indian society. So for drawing the tribals in the larger Indian society, you have this representation in the parliament or state legislature or higher education institutions, or you find state employment. That is how you are drawing them, making them part of the larger Indian society. And that is through the representation is through the reservations. So that is how one really finds. One dimension of a constitution is trying to see as to how tribes who remain isolated, as to how they should really be made part of the state and they should really be made part of the larger Indian society. But at the same time, there is a provision of protection. And the provisions of protections you find in different articles. There is a provisions with respect to language, not only for the different language, but it's also tribal languages is a language. So that there is that provision. Or you find that there is this provision of the 5th and 6th schedule, which provides entirely different kind of administrative system for the tribals. So you have 6th schedule in the context of the Northeast. You have 5th schedule, let's say in the earlier it was 9 states, now there are 10 states of the almost middle India and one is the North India. And then you find there are tribals who are outside of the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule. So if the legal system is very different in the Indian constitutions, can we talk of the national tribal policy? Because you cannot really violate legal system or legal provisions. The policy has to work in conformity with the provisions that is there in the Indian constitutions. So if the Indian constitution itself provides a kind of a framework which is somewhat very, very different, then you have to really talk of the tribal policies rather than the tribal policy, because I think that really takes into considerations of the different regional context. So if you really look at the Northeast, you find that 6th schedule, what is 6th schedule? The predominant component of the 6th schedule is the provisions of autonomous district council. So within the province of Assam, they had an autonomous district council. An autonomous district council, it means that it is a sort of a mini state that within the autonomous district council under 6th schedule, they can make legislations with respect to certain specified subjects. They can do the executive functions, including development functions, and they can also have a kind of judicial functions, in the sense settle disputes on certain matters, which comes under the subject of the 6th schedule. So what you find, it is a mini state. So you have a state of Assam, within that you have autonomous districts, maybe of Garo Hills, you say, or you say the Khasi and Jantia Hills, or you Lusai Hills. But this autonomous districts council has further been expanded. It has been what is called introduced in other parts, in Tripura and in the Bodo areas, which earlier not even was in the 6th schedule. It was not even in the 5th schedule. So it is because of the movement you find that the autonomous districts council is different names, different structure is there, but then autonomous council under 6th schedule has been introduced. So what it really means? It really empowers people to make law, to execute, and to settle the disputes. So this is what Elvin was talking about, Jawaharlal Nehru. If you really look at Jawaharlal Nehru's principal 5 principles, what does it mean? It basically, either you find these principles are reflected in the Autonomous Districts Council, or you find that Autonomous Districts Council's principle is reflected in the principles which Jawaharlal Nehru really enunciated. So if that is the legal principle, then naturally the tribal policy is the tribal policies, in the sense with respect to education, with respect to health, with respect to livelihood, is being managed by the tribal people themselves, and this moving to different directions. Therefore, there are different policies. So then you come to the what is called the Central India, or what is called the 5th schedule. 5th schedule. So, but even Autonomous Districts Council 6th schedule is trying to provide protection. So it's providing protections out of the autonomous council through the institutional mechanism of Autonomous Districts Council. When you come to the 5th schedule, there is a protection, but the protection is vested in the power of the executive, namely the governor. It becomes more paternalistic rather than empowering. In the autonomous, it is empowering people to govern themselves. Here, the protection is really coming in the authority of the governor, the executive, who is responsible, accountable to the president. So it basically, in the sense, and in the constitutions, it has been given that he has a power to see that the laws or the policies which have been enacted by the parliament or state legislature, if it is not in the interest of the tribal communities, if it is not really trying to secure the land, the resources, the forest, the language, and culture, he may not necessarily restrict those laws. But then what you find in the last 70 years of India's independence, you find that no governor has exercised a constitutional mandate that has been given to them. They've always been saying that they have to abide by the cabinet. Already you find that if what is called constitution gives them a discretion, and later on you find that when Sitaram was the home minister, you found that, well, the attorney general has said that governor has a very special power in the context of the 5th schedule areas. So you find in the process, you have imposed all kinds of laws in the context of the 5th schedule areas, including Andhra or Telangana, whatever the states, because they are part of the 5th schedules. So you have imposed that. And in the process, you find that the kind of access on land and forest and other kind of resources that tribals in the central India, they really enjoyed, had completely been eroded. And therefore, you now adopt a policy which is primarily, let's say, with respect to education, livelihood, and health. That's all. You don't... your policy with respect to land, forest, and other river and other kinds of resources is very general policy, which is primarily as to how to appropriate that kind of resources. So there is this tussle. So you find that all those developments that have really taken place in the 5th schedule areas is contrary to what has been stated in the constitutions. And that is really the bane of the problems as far as the 5th schedule areas are concerned. And therefore, you are now talking about education. So when you talk about policy in the context of tribals, you only talk in terms of education. You talk about livelihood, in terms of health. What about land? What about forest? What about water? What about the environment? There you have to talk about the national policy, not really tribal policy. So what is there? There is all these kinds of problems that we have. So much of the fifth schedule areas, there is nothing like a tribal policy. It is the national policies which we have extended to the tribal areas, and specifically you bring certain kinds of relaxation. For example, if educational primary schools, health school, well, the population relaxation. So if it is 4 lakhs for the plains, you say, okay, 3 lakhs population, 2 or 5 lakh population, you will have health or educational facilities. That's the only thing that you do it. Otherwise, you find in tribal areas, in case of fifth schedule, you find that the same policies which are there for the rural development, you are extending it. You consider them as different, and yet you are extending the same kinds of provisions. So look at the educations. Have you ever tried to work out a kind of educational system or syllabus which is different than what is called the subnational educational systems? No, no states have done that. But whereas in Northeast, you really take it, it's the tribals who developed what kind of education you have to really take it. So that is the problem. And now, if you really go to the outside of the fifth and sixth schedule areas, then you find that they are almost like only, there are some reservations, some constitutional provisions, maybe restriction on the areas of land, but their development is the same as the general population. So even the fifth schedule, which have a special constitutional provision, you find the general orientation, the general policies, and even outside the fifth and sixth schedule, you find general policies which really work. There's nothing like a tribal policy. So if you're really looking about the tribal policy, then you find that, well, something which works, it only works in the context of the Northeast. It doesn't really work in the context of the peninsular India. So that is where you have to look at that. So tribal policies, when you're talking about the regional context that you are talking about, it is very, very important. You have to see as to how, because of the region and the structure of the region, you find that the constitutional provisions, the legal provision which are pro-oriented towards tribals have been overpowered by the larger policies and larger laws which almost in a way has nullified whatever safeguards that were there. So they have not been protected. Tribals in the peninsular India are not really being protected. They are, therefore, the questions of maintaining their identity, their social and cultural system, their land and forest doesn't arise because there is no protected mechanism, although Constitution does provide. So if you really want to protect it through the globalizations, there were some mechanisms to see that that's too late. 1996, you introduced the PESA, and 2006, we have the Forest Rights Act. The historical injustice. PESA is trying to give you self-governance without bringing any amendment in the act, without doing the power of the governor. Best thing would have been that you should have introduced the sixth schedule kind of a mechanism in rather than the kind of a PESA. So there was a need for altering the legal mechanism. That legal mechanism was not altered. Governor still became very important. He is still important. And you have this PESA, and PESA doesn't really work because in order for PESA to work, all laws, all policies has to be synchronized with the provisions of the PESA, which no government is interested in doing it. How do you synchronize the Forest Act, Indian Forest Act, or Moneylenders Act with the provisions of the Panchayat? Because you give these rights to the Panchayat, Gram Sabha, but you are not synchronizing it at all. So, there are lots of bottlenecks. Even today, many states, they don't have the PESA rules. 1996, and today is almost 2021, is more than 20 years. So you don't have somewhat, no rules. How, if there are no rules, how you will implement it? So these are the problems. So, and then outside of it, so this is what I'm really trying to say, is that basically point that I'm trying to make it is that regional focus is very, very important. And I think one has to really look at, and the regional location has to be seen in the context of the legal and the constitutional framework. And you have to really look at that and as to how it has worked. Now, with the coming of the globalizations, you have earlier land could really be acquired only by the state. Now you have all state governments are trying to have a land bank, acquire land and then make it at the disposal of the corporates. This is a part of the globalization, privatizations, globalizations, and liberalizations. So you have liberalized the economy. So the tribals who needed protection, by introducing liberalizations and privatizations and globalization, you have opened them to competitions. And the government itself now is more collaborating with the corporates rather than the tribals. So that is the problem of globalization. And when you saw that there is a globalization, it has led to violence, then you are having a safety valve like the PESA and the Forest Rights Act. But you are not allowing even the PESA to function effectively, not even allowing the Forest Rights Act to be functioning effectively. That's the problem. So on the occasion of the 27th, what is called year of the Indigenous Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, where we have been celebrating or having functions today, and it's good that at least government of Andhra Pradesh seems to have accepted and becoming a part of the celebrations. Otherwise, government of India, although he has been signatory to the Union Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, he's always said there's no indigenous people here in India, and therefore they have always abstained from participating in the celebrations. But the state governments have been accommodating it, right? But then I think if state governments really want to take it forward, then they have really to work hard. You have to really work as to how best they are able to implement the constitutional provisions which have been given in the 5th schedule area and the policies, particularly the what's called the legal framework of the PESA and the Forest Rights Act, where you find it's not only private rights, the community rights, the community forest rights, forest resources, and all. These are all kinds of rights. These are trying to address the historical injustice which has been done, and this began in the colonial period, but under the post-independent India, this has been aggravated. So post-independent India for the tribals, it is still colonization is going on. That colonization has to come to a halt. Until that colonization doesn't come to a halt, you find the tribals in the peninsular India, it's going to have this kind of a problem. So I think when we are celebrating the, what is called the Indigenous People, the world's Indigenous People Day, it is important for us as a researcher, as people in the government, as politicians, to reflect and to see, are we really very, very sincere? And are we really concerned about their development, their protections, their identity? Then I think not asking anything, just demand, or the tribals will ask that just go by the constitutions and the legality which has been there in the context of protecting the tribal population or tribal people. That's all they will ask. And I think if one does that, probably you'll find that you need a kind of a different kind of policy to work out and to address the problems of the indigenous people, particularly in places. So you find that there is no national policy. There are policies which we don't even talk about tribal policies, but the tribal policies are very different in the context of Northeast India because of the legal framework. It is different. In the case of 5th schedule, although there was a completely different legal framework, that legal framework has completely been eroded. And then we have outside of the 5th and 6th schedule areas where you find that it is just general laws which are applicable. Now, so you have to keep that context in mind when you're trying to address and see as to how this legal and administrative framework, which is working as a constraint to the tribal development, to what extent are they addressed, and to what extent they are really resolved, in order to see that the fruits of the development of the tribal people actually accrues, across the 5th schedule areas, which you find quite positively accruing to the people of the Northeast. With this, some very scattered observations, let me end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Martinez Kakagaru, for giving insights into the tribal policies. In the administration and development of the scheduled tribes in the country. And as a visiting professor of Institute of Human Development, New Delhi, you have given a lot of insights and advices to the Ministry of Tribal Affairs also. So taking into consideration of your valuable suggestions in future, we will try to go ahead. All TRIs in the other states will work on these research areas and come up with the valuable policies for development of the tribal areas. Once again, thankful to you, sir, Professor Martinez Kakagaru, for giving valuable messages and recommendations for the development of the tribals in the country. Now, I request our Chief Guest, Honorable Deputy CM and Minister for Tribal Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Srimati Pushpa Srivani Madam, who is giving her valuable message through video, because she is participating in message through video. So our message will be telecasted now.
There's audio problem. They are working on it.
Tribal welfare, Sri Katila Gande IAS to give his valuable presidential address. Hello, hello.
Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Srimati Pamela Pushpa Srivani garu, respected Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, Narajit Kapoor, and the Director of Tribal Welfare, Ranjit Basha, the dignitaries on the dais, Chief Organizer, Mr. Ravindra Babu, Lakshmi, and the participants, the Chief Coordinator, Dr. Srinivas Rao, Vice Chancellor, HCU, Hyderabad Central University, Dr. BJ Rao, Professor Kaka, Genius Kaka, and many participants who are participating virtually. I extend a very warm welcome to all of you for this national seminar on travel issues. During the inaugural brief, Dr. Srinivas was briefing that on this very subject, they got around 300 odd research articles from 86 odd presenters. The importance of these research articles in framing the tribal policy and development programs, I believe, very, very crucial. And it was also documented around 86 articles in the form of 4 volumes of books, highlighting the initiatives of various governments across the country and the loopholes in their implementation, the gap for the developmental strategies to be taken up. I believe this is a great opportunity for all of us to analyze and visualize where we stand in terms of tribal development. As Professor Virginius was analyzing the things from different perspectives, and he broadly put the tribal development into 3 parallels: the 5th schedule areas, the 6th schedule areas, and those areas outside these 2, 5th and 6th schedules, and the necessity of having the uniform tribal policy across the country and the difficulties of having that. Context, we have to analyze the very existence of tribal population in different pockets of the country, and their cultural identity and population identity and the reach of those tribal communities from these policies. After 75 or 74 years of independence, still we are talking about tribal development and necessity of training the specific programs for development of these tribes. As pointed out by the earlier speakers, majority of the programs are schemes we have so far implemented, mainly focusing on education, health, and livelihoods. As pointed out by, again, Zane Virginius, there are many other aspects which still you have to explore, like environment, right to education, making it very compulsory in tribal areas, drinking water, remoteness and interior nature of the very tribal habitations, infrastructural needs, connectivity issues, all those things. So I believe, as rightly observed by Virginius, many issues are there even today in the context of tribal development, which need to be focused. During the introductory remarks, Dr. Srinivas was observing that around 86 articles were documented. I have gone through a few of them. Majorly, all these articles, they revolve around, again, education, health, and livelihoods. I believe this education and health, they are the primary objectives of any governance to empower the tribal populations. So when it comes to, I believe Srinivas also commented, remarked on the introduction of English medium as medium of instruction in these tribal areas by government of Andhra Pradesh. It's a big debate because some of the authors were arguing that for tribal people, we should have education, the primary education, at least in the mother tongue. We have certain groups within the tribes which were categorized as primarily vulnerable tribal groups. When Ravindra Babu was telling around 86 odd tribes are there in the entire country, identifying these certain tribes as primarily vulnerable itself is a great, what I can say, research, what I can say, outcome, where we can focus our strategies and programs for upliftment of these vulnerable, most vulnerable sections within this tribal community. As pointed out, I believe having the district autonomous councils parallel to 5th schedule is a big debatable issue in 6th schedule as well as outside the 5th and 6th schedule areas. As pointed out by earlier speakers, the executive authority vested in the name of governor, how far we are reaching the tribals in specific issues. So coming to Andhra Pradesh, in the recent years, we have been implementing this Navaratnalu and other issues. Apart from these 9 welfare schemes, flagship welfare schemes of the government of Andhra Pradesh, specifically for welfare of the tribals, the government shouldered the responsibility of recognizing these forest rights for all the eligible tribes in the scheduled area. And we regularized, we conferred close to an extent of 2 lakh acres in the second phase of the RY for recognition of forest rights. Totally, I believe, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, both the phases put together, 3.84 lakh acres of area extent has been handed over to the scheduled tribes to eke out their livelihoods. Honorable Chief Minister, Sri Y.S. Jagannath Reddy Garu, apart from regularizing, apart from conferring these forest rights to these eligible scheduled tribe families, has also directed the department to take up the development of these, all-round development of these lands, duly dovetailing with NGNREGs. Department of Tribal Welfare Andhra Pradesh is closely coordinating with Rural Development Department to own this activity and hand over fully developed agricultural lands, fully developed lands to these eligible tribes. You have been doing that. Likewise,
Govindra's got a video and audio problem.
we took the help of Ajit Premji's philanthropic initiatives, and we conducted a pilot study on reach of these welfare programs in our tribal areas. We have taken a special study on these things, and we found certain households which are missing this benefit. Then we coordinated with their respective departments, whether it is IT, our school education department, our agriculture department, and we succeeded in making these tribal households included on that particular benefit. Likewise, with the support of API, Department of Tribal Welfare, actively pursuing to minimize these exclusions to the extent possible. Probably in days to come, when we say around 27 lakh tribal people are living in Andhra Pradesh, our endeavor is to include or cover every eligible tribal family with all the government programs which are being implemented actively by the government of Andhra Pradesh. Why I narrated this initiative? When we are talking about policy, there might be a number of policies which assist the tribals or help the tribals for emancipation. But if that particular policy, however it is implemented, if it has certain issues where the tribal family cannot access that benefit, it goes unrecognized unless we have certain specific study. So these issues, when Srinivas was mentioning about English medium instruction, Nadu Nedu scheme implementation, base gift of education programs, what I can say, all these things. So we have to, I believe, as a research scholar, you have to analyze the reach of these programs to these areas, especially tribal households, and impact of these developmental initiatives on that particular household. Have they really come out of this poverty, the clutches of poverty? If not, where we went wrong? How we can reorient our policy initiative? What are the other issues we can govern with our programming or scheming? As we initially, what I can say, started off, that there are certain specificities within our tribal populations. In the context of this globalization, how are we integrating these these various specific issues which are specific to that area, that tribe, rather that particular state. How are we integrating, how are we visualizing these differences existing within the tribal community? How best we can have, we can evolve a national policy for the general benefit of all the tribes. Probably here, the implementation of ROFR might be one great national policy, I should say, which is commonly done by all the states. Likewise, we need to have right to education policy, ROFR, or any other national law. Apart from having national laws, we must have certain state laws. So I was inquiring about this PESA, 1996. PESA got enacted, and I can say with confidence that we, the state of Andhra Pradesh, we came out with rules and we have been implementing PESA. There are only 2 departments, I was told, which need to adopt this PESA in our state of Andhra Pradesh. So I believe, certainly, sir, I believe with active involvement, engaging the tribal communities in a different way, to own their, what I can say, existence with help of the state development initiatives will certainly strengthen their financial status, and it will result in overall development of that particular society. When we are identifying the things at the individual family level, as a scholar, we have to analyze the impact of this, what I can say, non-reach of this particular benefit onto the entire community. For example, the drinking water needs or internet connectivity. So all these things, when we are identifying at the one household level, that is missing of Aadhaar, that Amavadi scheme is getting excluded. Missing of Aadhaar, right to Bharosa is getting excluded. Like that, if we can identify one particular scheme and what is its impact. So ultimately, how to correct that particular mistake. So I believe how to correct that lag. So in that way, we, scholars can suggest, because policy making and one way should get the real ground reality. Then only we can reorient, revisit our policy and strengthen our policy making. So I believe this particular workshop will certainly, especially scholars from across the country, will focus on different issues, because I highlighted only Andhra Pradesh initiatives. There are initiatives in Mizoram, there are initiatives in Jharkhand, there are initiatives in Odisha. So I believe all of us, if we can really coordinate and come out with our findings which have specific impact in those zones, and certainly I think it will be a major platform to facilitate all our findings to evolve at national level into a major tribal welfare policy. So with this thing, I wish all the participants a very useful outcomes from this seminar, and these outcomes of this seminar will certainly benefit the policymakers in a big way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary Sir, for giving valuable insights into the national policies to be implemented and way forward how to, in 5th schedule areas and 6th schedule areas, what Andhra Pradesh is leading, and other states also, the best practices we have to take into account, and those to be emulated, adopted, so that the uniform policies can be evolved for the development of the tribes. So thank you very much, sir, for giving a valuable presidential address on today national seminar.
on tribal policies and programs in India, regional reflections in the context of globalization. So now our Deputy Chief for Tribal message.
Govindaraj garu, is there any issue with the network from your side? Hello.
Every year as World Adivasi Day as a state festival to reaffirm its commitment to protect and promote the research repository of tribal heritage and culture native to the state of Andhra Pradesh and its commitment to the socio-economic development of the tribals. The observance is also to ensure ways and means to revitalize the identity of tribals of Andhra Pradesh and encourage protection of their rights. Andhra Pradesh is one of the states governed by the provisions of fifth schedule. After the reorganization of the state of Andhra Pradesh in 2014, we have intensified our efforts for tribal welfare. After bifurcation in the state of Andhra Pradesh, we have 34 tribal communities and areas notified under 5th schedule spread over 38 mandals in 5 districts. Under the able leadership of our beloved Chief Minister, Sri Y.S. Jagannath Reddy, our state government has rededicated to the welfare and development of scheduled tribes in the state. Andhra Pradesh has the distinction of being the first state to bring out legislation for implementation of tribal subplan. The government of Andhra Pradesh, under the able guidance and the leadership of our beloved Chief Minister, Sri Y.S. Jagannath Reddy, is committed towards strengthening its hands to formulate best policies and to implement them for the tribal development. The government is implementing Navaratnalu, a flagship program towards well-being of all on saturation mode with special focus on STs of the state on equity basis. 1,572.3 crores for the year 2020 to 21 and 1,202.76 crores for year 2021 to 22 was released to various sections of ST beneficiaries directly to their SB accounts through DBT mode during 2020 to 21 and 2021 to 22 so far. These case assistance programs facilitated the ST communities to serve better during the hard COVID-19 pandemic situation. The government is committed to look at the policy initiatives, best practices towards tribal welfare and their development. Apart from the above case assistance programs which are being implemented under Navaratnalu, the following major infrastructure developmental programs have also been taken up, first of its kind in tribal areas. Exclusive engineering college for STs at Kurupam with an estimated cost of 153.853 crores. Exclusive medical college for STs at Paderu sanctioned with 500 crores. Multi-specialty hospitals in each of ITDA headquarters with a total estimated cost of 246.30 crores. The government has taken up two prestigious projects as a joint venture with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. Tribal Freedom Fighters Museum at Lambasingi village of Chintapalli Mandal at a total estimated cost of 35 crores, and this museum is scheduled for completion by March 2023. TCRTM building at Visakhapatnam at a total estimated cost of 17.50 crores and the first phase construction taken up with an estimated cost 10 crores was completed. The government of Andhra Pradesh is the first state which has established the TCRTM for the first of its kind in the country as registered society-wide registered number 489/2016 and the Societies Registration Act 1964 with the nomenclature Tribal Culture Research and Training Mission and is functioning with its headquarters at Visakhapatnam. The Tribal Culture Research and Training Mission receives funds from the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India under Central Sector Scheme and 100% grant in aid to focus on its core responsibilities as body of knowledge and research more or less as think tank for tribal development, preservation of tribal culture heritage, providing inputs to state for evidence-based planning and appropriate legislations, capacity building of tribals and persons, institutions associated with the tribal affairs, dissemination of information and creation of awareness. On this occasion, I take it an opportunity to thank the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India for supplementing the efforts of Government of Andhra Pradesh in strengthening the TCRTM into a research-based center of excellence. I am glad that the Tribal Culture Research and Training Mission, in collaboration with the Center for Regional Studies, School of Social Sciences, University of Hyderabad, has jointly organized the National Seminar on the larger theme of tribal policies and programs in India regional reflections in the context of globalization with the funding supporting for Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. This seminar is unique in this kind where the academicians and administrators are brought together. The idea of this national seminar is to create combined platform to disseminate the best practices, policy initiatives of implementation of various tribal programs while understanding the same from their state in India. It is pleasure to note that about 200 scholars from different social science disciplines were responded positively and submitted abstracts cum full research papers from multi-disciplines such as anthropology, ecology, history, public policy, social work and sociology on the following sub-themes. First one is opportunities and threats to the tribal areas in the context of globalization. Second one is livelihood opportunities. Third one is education, health and gender. Fourth one is impact of globalization on tribal culture and heritage. A total of 67 research papers authored by 85 eminent scholars have been published in 4 books with different thematic book title, edited by seminar coordinator Dr. V. Srinivas Rao, Associated Professor, Center for Regional Studies, University of Hyderabad, and published by Rawat Publication, an established international publisher with a reputation in academic publications are as follows. First one is Tribal Livelihood and Governance, Regional Concerns. Second one is Disadvantaged Tribes of India, Regional Concerns. Challenges of Tribal Development, Contemporary Social Concerns. Tribal Interrogation in India, Northeast and beyond. Each of these 4 books has a central theme for academic discussions. These chapters provide a critical insight to understand the major challenges of tribal issues in India. The research findings are very important from the policy formulation point of view. These volumes offer a fairly comprehensive account of wide range of issues. These chapters bring together various tribal issues in a multidisciplinary format spanning a range of disciplines such as anthropology, ecology, history, public policy, social work and sociology. Every paper has the contemporary values that is certainly helpful for policy formulation with reference to innumerable tribal problems in India. I am immensely happy to inaugurate this national seminar. I welcome all of you and wish that the discussions and deliberations would be fruitful and meaningful. I expect that the takeaways from this seminar would contribute in revisiting the policy, making research more focused and innovation widespread for the cause of the tribals, not only for Andhra Pradesh, for the entire country. Wishing you all the best. Pamala Pushpa Srivani, Deputy CM, Tribal Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh. Thank you.
So, at last, we could get the message of the Honorable Deputy CM and Minister for Tribal Welfare of Government of Andhra Pradesh. So, with her commitment, so we will take forward the implementation of the tribal policies and programs for the development of the interior and hilltop villages of the Andhra Pradesh state. So finally, we have come to the concluding session of the inaugural session. So I am thankful to especially the Secretary Sir, Director Sir, and our department tribal welfare staff, and mostly importantly the press who has covered widely this inaugural session. So now I request Deputy Director TCRTM Lakshmi Madam to propose vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose vote of thanks on this significant occasion. I, D. Lakshmi, on the behalf of Tribal Culture Research and Training Mission, Tribal Welfare Department, Andhra Pradesh, and Center for Regional Studies, University of Hyderabad, take it a privilege to extend my sincere vote of thanks to the honorable dignitaries, delegates who took out valuable time from their busy schedule and graced this occasion with their presence. I take this opportunity to thank our Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, Minister for Tribal Welfare, Andhra Pradesh, Srimati Pushpa Srivani Pamala, for delivering valuable message on this memorable occasion. I would like to place on record a heartfelt gratitude to Sri Navaljeet Kapoor, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and the team of Ministry of Tribal Affairs for extending their guidance, support, contribution, and for enhancing the pride of occasion with a gracious presence. I would also like to acknowledge our sincere gratitude Sri Kantilal Dande IAS, Secretary Tribal Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Chairperson, Tribal Cultural Research and Training Mission, and Ranjit Basha, IAS Director, Tribal Welfare, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Vice Chairperson, Tribal Cultural Research and Training Mission for gracing the occasion and extending this support to make the national seminar become a reality amidst the pandemic. I express my sincere thanks to Professor B.J. Rao, Vice Chancellor, University of Hyderabad, for his esteemed presence on this occasion. I thank Professor Virginius Zaza, Visiting Professor, Institute for Human Development, New Delhi, for gracing the occasion and delivering the keynote speech of this national seminar. I thank Sri G.V.V.S.V. Prasad, Engineering in Chief, Tribal Welfare, and Dr. Palla Trinath Garu, gracing the occasion. I owe special thanks to Sri Isa Ravindra Babu, Additional Director, Tribal Welfare, and Mission Director, Tribal Cultural Research and Training Mission, for his valuable guidance and encouragement for ensuring the national seminar to be a grand and memorable event. I thank all the TRIs across the country for gracing the seminar. I also extend my thanks to the print and electronic media for evincing interest in covering the event. My thanks are due to all our distinguished invitees for the participation from various places across the country. Last but not the least, I express my heartfelt thanks to the team of Tribal Cultural Research and Training Mission and Center for Regional Studies, University of Hyderabad, for working hard to make this seminar become a reality. I thank everyone for being here and wish you all 2 days of thought-provoking and enlightening presentation ahead. Thank you all.
Sir, I think Ravindra Babu garu. A small piece of announcement from my side as a coordinator. And with this, we have completed the inaugural session, and I request all the participants and the paper presenters to join online with the different different online links that are already shared with you. Yes. We have completed the inaugural session. Thank you so much.
Department of Tribal Welfare, Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India, TCRTM, మరియు Tribal Welfare Department, ఈ మూడు కలిసి నేషనల్ సెమినార్ 2 days నేషనల్ సెమినార్ ఆర్గనైజ్ చేస్తున్నాం. ఈ నేషనల్ సెమినార్ ట్రైబల్ పాలసీస్ అండ్ ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ ఇన్ ఇండియా, రీజనల్ రిఫ్లెక్షన్స్ ఇన్ ది కాంటెక్స్ట్ ఆఫ్ గ్లోబలైజేషన్, ఈ టాపిక్ మీద ఈ సెమినార్ జరుగుతుంది. దీన్ని హైదరాబాద్ సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీ ప్రొఫెసర్ అసోసియేట్ ప్రొఫెసర్ శ్రీనివాసరావు గారు కోఆర్డినేట్ చేస్తున్నారు. వైస్ ఛాన్సలర్ విజయ రావు గారి డైరెక్షన్లో చేస్తున్నారు. దీనిలో దాదాపు 86 పార్టిసిపెంట్స్ వారి యొక్క రీసెర్చ్ ఆర్టికల్స్ని 66 రీసెర్చ్ ఆర్టికల్స్ మాకు పంపించారు. దీని ద్వారా మేము ఈ రీసెర్చ్ ఆర్టికల్స్ని కంపైల్ చేసి 4 బుక్స్ మనం పబ్లిష్ చేయడం జరిగింది. అంటే ఈ రీసెర్చ్ ఆర్టికల్స్ అన్నీ కూడా ఇప్పటి వరకు వివిధ ప్రభుత్వాలు అంటే వివిధ రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వాలు కానీ గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా కానీ అమలు చేస్తున్నటువంటి ట్రైబల్ పాలసీస్ మీద, అలాగే వాటి ఇంపాక్ట్ మీద, అలాగే ఇంకా చేయవలసిన ఏరియాస్ని స్పెసిఫై చేస్తూ ఈ రీసెర్చ్ ఆర్టికల్స్ వచ్చాయి. సో ముఖ్యంగా ఇప్పటి వరకు కూడా మనకి ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ ఇనిషియేటివ్స్ అన్ని కూడా ఈ ట్రైబల్ ఏరియాస్లో ఉన్న ఎడ్యుకేషన్ మరియు లైబ్రరీస్ మీద ఫోకస్ చేస్తున్నాయి. అయితే ఇప్పుడు చాలామంది పార్టిసిపెంట్ చెప్పినట్టుగా ఇంకా డ్రింకింగ్ వాటర్, ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్, అలాగే ఇన్ఫ్రాస్ట్రక్చరల్ డెవలప్మెంట్, కనెక్టివిటీ ఇష్యూస్ ఇలాంటివి కూడా మనం డెవలప్ చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందని చెప్పి చాలామంది అబ్జర్వ్ చేస్తున్నారు. ఈ విధంగా ఈ నేషనల్ సెమినార్ దీనిలో చాలామంది వర్చువల్గా పార్టిసిపేట్ చేస్తున్నారు. విజయవాడ, ఒరిస్సా, జార్ఖండ్, రాజస్థాన్ వివిధ రాష్ట్రాల నుంచి వారి యొక్క రీసెర్చ్ పార్టిసిపేట్ చేస్తున్నారు. వారి కాంట్రిబ్యూషన్ రీసెర్చ్ కాంట్రిబ్యూషన్స్ షేర్ చేసుకుంటున్నారు. సో ఇవి వీటన్నిటి కూడా కంపేర్ చేసి సో దీని ద్వారా సో ఇప్పటి వరకు ఉన్న పాలసీ ప్రోగ్రామింగ్, ట్రైబల్ పాలసీ, ట్రైబల్ ప్రోగ్రామింగ్ మరింత విజువల్గా మరిన్ని అభివృద్ధి కార్యక్రమాలు తీసుకోవడానికి, కొత్త పాలసీస్ చేయడానికి అనువుగా actually this is right now Government of India schedules, like various areas in already policy పెట్టుకోవాలంటే. సో ఇప్పుడు ప్రత్యేకంగా గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా లెవెల్లో యూనిఫామ్ పాలసీ తీసుకురావడానికి అవకాశం. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం ROFR యాక్ట్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా లెవెల్లో తీసుకొచ్చాం. ROFR యాక్ట్ ప్రాజెక్ట్ రైట్స్ యాక్ట్.
Yeah, thank you so much, all the dignitaries, and with this we have already concluded the inaugural session. Now I request the paper presenters to. There are different parallel sessions that we are running in a particular slot. Therefore, already the other parallel sessions already started at 12:15, and there are 3 parallel sessions in one slot. So I request all the participants. I am a host, and the moment I disconnect, and it will be disconnected to all you. So therefore, I request all of you to join by using the separate Google links to join in the particular technical sessions. Thank you so much.